seconds away on Studio 5.
Sir, I am not done. History laughs.
Meet the man whose challenge to the NFL inspired a film. Dr. Bennet Omalu is in Studio 5 with his new book, Truth Doesn't Have a Side. And then...
This is as real as it gets, kids.
Get a behind-the-scenes look at the film The Glass Castle and an inside scoop from the stars.
It's this Eden, it's this place that they're going to get to, this beautiful paradise.
Also ahead.
We've come all this way, Captain. It would be irresponsible to leave whatever that is unknown.
CBS breathes new life into the Star Trek Enterprise, but we've got the scoop on a fan who's never let it die. In Studio 5, starting now. Welcome to Studio 5. So good to have you back for another week counting down the best in uplifting entertainment news. Let's not waste a second. Here are the first two in this week's Top 5. At number 5.
Racism is real, church. It's a sin and it's not okay.
City Church pastor Judah Smith is among a chorus of Christian leaders speaking out against racism, following these images of the tragic events in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Racism, in fact, is not political, it's spiritual. And our silence is not an option. We've started the conversation in this church, and it must continue.
Others took to social media, posting challenges for their followers to rise up.
The evil of racism will not merely go away, and we cannot, before God, stay silent. So think before you speak, but do not fail to speak. Can I get an amen?
Amen. At number 4.
Much more than this, I did it my way.
The King of Rock and Roll and the King of Kings come together in a new offer from the Museum of the Bible. In a Rockin' Through the Psalms with the King, Elvis fans can read the Bible and see personal notes Elvis left behind on the pages of his own Bible.
And it is my way.
That's number 5, and 4. Number 3 is just moments away. Dr. Bennet Omalu is a forensic pathologist who took on the NFL with an explosive discovery of the game's danger to the very brains of its players. Omalu is sharing that journey and his life in this book, Truth Doesn't Have a Side. And he's sitting down with us for this week's Studio 5 interview. But first, let's take a look at a scene from the film Concussion and hear from actor Will Smith, who brought Omalu's story to the big screen.
What do they want?
The NFL wants you to say you made it all up.
I made it up.
They're accusing you of fraud.
If you retract, you'll be fine. This all goes away.
Why are they doing this?
They're terrified of you.
If you could briefly say, who is Dr. Omalu?
Oh, Dr. Omalu is a really interesting, paradoxical creature, you know.
Bennet Omalu was born into a poor family in the jungles of Nigeria. He immigrated to America, earned 8 degrees, and became a forensic pathologist in Pittsburgh.
He's a man of science, firmly, but he is also one of the most spiritually and religiously based people I've ever met in my life. Everything in his life is about God, yet he's a scientist. It was beautiful to spend time with him and watch how he blended those two concepts in his life.
Many of us meet you first in the film Concussion as Will Smith portrays your character, and we see some pretty tough fights for you there. What's your relationship with football today?
My relationship with football is good, I should believe so, because whatever I've done about football has been in that spirit of us all being members of one another, one body, one spirit, one hope, bound together by the bond of peace of Christ. So whatever I have done has been in that spirit of my calling as a Christian. I do it out of love. I don't hate football. I actually love football. I love the NFL. The NFL is a corporation, and what do corporations do? Make money. So I want the NFL to be very successful. But Matthew chapter 18 tells us that our children are most precious in the eyes of God. And as a parent, when you conceive a child, God invites you in to partake in creation. And God gives you that gift of His Spirit, the gift of life. My middle name, Ifakando, life is the greatest gift of all. Knowing what we know today, in the 21st century, there is no justifiable reason whatsoever, especially as a Christian and as a physician, that any child younger than the age of 18 should continue to play the high-impact, high-contact collision sports.
You're right. I'm in speaking of the football player that you meet on the autopsy table. I met Mike Webster on the autopsy table. When I met him, I knew I had to find the answers for the problems that plagued him. This was my calling, my duty as a fellow human being made in the image of God. In that moment, you knew that was your duty?
I did not know what was to come, but I was embedded in my faith that if I walk in the way of God, that I wouldn't get lost. And when I saw Mike Webster, I may get emotional. This was a man that morning I heard about people talk about him in the most derogatory ways, that he was essentially a loser. He was blamed for his situation and disposition in life. And as a forensic pathologist, I was offended by what I heard. And they spoke about him in the context of all the retired players. But I asked myself, if this man had to play this game wearing a helmet, there was a risk of traumatic brain injury. And couldn't he have been suffering from a disease similar to what boxers suffer, dementia pugilistica? Mike Webster suffered depression. All my life, I struggled with depression and very low self-esteem because I was born as a refugee. First 4 years of my life, I suffered malnutrition and the psychological trauma of war. So it affected me and permanently mine, if you could say that. So when I walked up to him on the autopsy table, I saw myself in him. And as a Christian, we know the God we worship is the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. He's not God of the dead. When the physical body dies, it's a transhumation. The spirit lives to the glory of God. So I was talking to his spirit. Because the same spirit that lives in me is the same spirit that lives in Mike Webster and the same spirit that lives in you. So that one spirit communicated with that one spirit in him. And I said to him, Mike Webster, let's get to the bottom of this. Let's get to the truth. That is why my book is Truth Doesn't Have a Side. That I will use all my education and knowledge and be the sacrificial lamb in his life to vindicate him and his family.
Your life really prepared you for this fight from the very beginning. You talk about the fact that you were born a refugee. I mean, I'm reading and you, your mom, and your dad are all essentially in a refugee hospital at the very same time. Your mother being treated for being delivered, your dad being treated for being a victim of war.
Yeah, he was hit by one of the bombs, had multiple shrapnels. In fact, they believed he was dead. So the Catholic charities picked up his body to place it in the truck for the mass grave, and he groaned. So they said, oh, he's alive. So they moved him to the local dilapidated refugee hospital. You know what a refugee hospital will be. And my father really, because what happens when you're in some type of difficulty in life, we many times are short-sighted, okay? And my advice is just be at peace. Embrace the love of God, because you do not know what lies ahead. My father, when about 2 weeks after I was born, when he could hold me, I was handed to him. And he held me in his bosom and said his name would be Bennet, from Benoit, blessed. For he is a blessing unto my life. And he gave me the middle name Ifakando. Life is the greatest gift of all. And guess what? My name, Onyemalu Kube, my last name, means he who knows must come forth and speak. Little did I know, even when I was struggling with depression.
If you haven't seen the film Concussion, it is certainly worth checking out, and so is Omalu's book, Truth Doesn't Have a Side. It's available now, wherever books are sold. Still ahead, here on Studio 5.
Don't turn this on me.
You're a Walsh. You were born to change the world.
Brie Larson and Woody Harrelson turn a best-selling memoir into a moving motion picture.
Everybody is trying to love you as best as they can.
Studio 5 takes you behind the scenes of The Glass Castle.
Attention. If you've bought life insurance to cover your funeral expenses, you could be losing hundreds of dollars a year on an overpriced policy. Call the number on your screen now to learn how to lower your monthly premiums with the Affordable Life Plan from Senior Life Insurance Company. Also, let us help you get cash back from your current overpriced policy. The Affordable Life Plan guarantees your rates cannot increase, your benefit will never decrease, and there is no medical exam, and you'll have lifetime coverage. The Affordable Life Plan was created for fixed incomes. We have rates that fit your budget. The call and information are free. By calling now, you'll lock in the lowest rate possible and receive these free magnetic reading glasses. Stop overpaying for your current policy. Learn how to get some of that money back and possibly save hundreds with the Affordable Life Plan.
Call 1-800-708-7576 now for your free information and free gift. You have no obligation. Operators are standing by. Call now.
Welcome back to Studio 5. Time to continue our countdown of this week's best in uplifting entertainment news. Here are the next two. At number 3.
All about how my life got turned upside down.
Tim Tebow goes the way of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and tries out his acting chops. The quarterback turned baseball player will guest star in the upcoming Pure Flix soap opera, Hilton Head Island.
The goal is not to be famous. The goal is not to have money in your bank account. The goal is not to have what the world defines as success. The goal is to change lives.
Tebow joined stars Donna Mills and Antonio Sabato Jr. in the faith-based soap opera, scheduled for release this fall. At number 2.
You guessed it, Lionel Richie teaming with Mariah Carey. That is a great duo.
And the opening act for the All the Hits tour is Christian artist Torrin Wells, who says his goal is to invade the tour with God's love.
Father, you give and take away every joy and every pain.
Wells is the former frontman for the group Royal Taylor. With that look at number 3 and number 2, that leaves only one more headline for us. Be sure to stick around for that. Box office numbers suggest many of you may have missed the opening weekend of the film The Glass Castle. Brie Larson and Woody Harrelson turn a best-selling memoir into a moving motion picture. Here's your first look.
Action!
The Glass Castle is a memoir about my childhood. It's about my family and these incredibly complicated parents who I had that, from a distance at least, looked like impoverished, homeless people. Some people would call them a little bit crazy, but there was so much more than that.
Well, your dad said he saw you pass by in a cab the other night. Acted like we weren't even there. You shouldn't be ashamed of us just because we choose a different lifestyle than you.
Being homeless in New York City does not count as a lifestyle choice.
When did you lose your sense of adventure?
I have a little bit of money now. I can help you if you want.
We're fine. You're the one who needs help. Look at you. Your values are all confused.
It is a film about family and about learning that everybody is trying to love you as best as they can, But sometimes as kids, we misinterpret that love because it's not the same that we need.
Swanky, I don't see one of your mama's paintings.
What are you doing here?
Just networking with all these fantastic people.
Every time someone leaves, you act like a child.
What's that supposed to mean?
It's not a surprise, Dad.
Look around. This ain't you. You ain't like those pawns, and you know it.
Don't turn this on me.
You're a waltz. You were born to change the world, not just add to the noise.
This is a story of a young woman who is filtering through her past and trying to make sense of it and trying to find, a new sense of peace with herself and with her relationship with her dad.
Mr. Taylor said we should be going to real school.
A real school, huh? This is as real as it gets, kids. You learn from living. Her father was a very loving guy, but he was also had a lot of problems. He was an alcoholic. There was just a lot about him that made her growing up difficult. But, really interesting guy. Not perfect by any means. We're gonna tear all this down and replace it with your game room. Ping pong, pool, foosball.
Trampoline?
Oh yeah, trampoline goes right over there, and then all these walls are gone, replaced with 3-inch glass. This can stay.
Doesn't that look lovely? Yellow stands for happiness and creativity.
This place doesn't have any running water or electricity.
Ignore her, she was born without vision.
The Glass Castle are these plans that Rex has been working on her whole life, and it's this idea that once they strike it rich, once he makes a bunch of money, he's gonna buy this beautiful house that's all made out of glass.
But it never really got past the blueprints,
It's this Eden, it's this place that they're going to get to, this beautiful paradise that they're not in now, and although they're living in squalor, one day the Glass Castle will be there.
It could have been something extraordinary, but Rex was more of a dreamer than one who realizes those dreams.
When times got really tough, Dad would pull out the blueprints of the Glass Castle and would work on them. And he never did build us a big fancy house, but I've come to realize that he gave me something much more valuable, and that was a hope and a dream for the future. That if a parent gives you that,
let's go!
Then you're lucky.
You have a right to be angry. I know you love him. You'll regret it if you don't come home.
One of the many blessings of having told my story is that people not only get it, they sometimes get it even more than I do. And there are so many people out there with stories that, if not identical to mine, at least enough that they can relate to.
And The Glass Castle is in American theaters right now. And still to come.
It's hard to imagine. You've served under me for 7 years.
As CBS gears up for a new Star Trek Enterprise, we'll introduce you to the fan who created his own tribute series.
Welcome back, and drum roll please. It is now time for the #1 headline in this week's look at the top 5 in uplifting entertainment stories. At number 1.
The energy that surrounds Jesus is electric.
Funny man Jim Carrey is again talking about Jesus.
I don't know if Jesus is real. I don't know if he lived. I don't know what he means, but the paintings of Jesus are really my desire to convey Christ consciousness.
His thoughts on Christ come through impressive paintings of the Son of God.
I wanted you to have the feeling when you looked in his eyes that he was accepting of who you are. I wanted him to be able to stare at you and heal you from the painting.
The man behind the characters in The Grinch, Dumb and Dumber, and The Mask opens up in this new documentary short titled I Needed Color.
You can find every race in the face of Jesus. And I think that's how every race imagines Jesus. They imagine him as their own.
There you have it. That's number 1 and a wrap for this week's Countdown. Vic Mignogna is an actor, a musician who's also made a name for himself as a voice in the world of animation. Beyond that, he's the man behind Star Trek Continues, who's also using his voice to stand up for a group who's often dumped on and tossed aside. He's this week's Studio 5 Bright Spot.
65, 63.4.
A nascent singularity has been reported near the uninhabited Cressida system. The Federation has assigned a gravitational wave engineer to the...
Let's begin with Star Trek, first of all. So, the mission and why you chose to do that.
I created Star Trek Continues about 4.5 years ago as a love letter to Star Trek, as a way to say, thank you for the way you inspired me, and I know I speak and thousands of people vicariously are living through what we're doing.
Sensors confirm a massive shift in the system.
Star Trek Continues is a fan-produced web series. It picks up where the original series left off. Vic Mignogna is the executive producer. He also plays Captain Kirk.
It's purely out of passion and love for this show that meant so much to so many.
Since the first episode in 2015, Star Trek Continues has become one of the most awarded and recognized fan productions in existence.
It's got to be a great honor because the creator's son has praised it.
Rod Roddenberry, Gene Roddenberry's son, is a big supporter, has been very enthusiastically supported our series. And I mean, he's many, many times publicly said, if his dad were alive today, he would consider this canon.
Vic Mignogna's love for Star Trek began when he was just a child.
I discovered that show after school at the exact moment when my parents divorced and my dad left. And I have, to this day, no relationship with my dad. I am very grateful to say my grandfather, who was a pastor, very much became like a father figure. But I think one of the things that pulled me towards Star Trek so much was because the dad was gone, and here was this role model, somebody that was brave and courageous and loved his friends. Star Trek inspired me to try things creatively that I'd never done before. And now, fast forward 40 years, my college degree is in film. I've been acting since I was 10 because of Star Trek.
Vic is also a music man with a passion for Christ.
I grew up in church, accepted the Lord when I was 13. My grandfather was a pastor. Mom played the piano. I mean, all of it. Tiny church in western Pennsylvania. Went to Christian schools and led worship, actually.
He's composed and produced more than 30 Christian albums, including DC Talk's first record. Vic is also a voiceover actor.
About 20 years ago, somebody encouraged me to audition for a studio in town, in Houston, that dubbed Japanese anime. So I went and auditioned, and I got cast in a show, and then another, and another, and another. And as I grew into that field and spent more time in it and started developing even a fan base and a recognition, I started thinking, you know, this could be a great opportunity to share God's love, to share God's gift and His grace with a lot of people that feel very ostracized.
He speaks at events like Comic-Con and isn't afraid to go toe-to-toe with people who condemn the event and those in attending in the name of faith.
That God loves them as they are and accepts them as they are.
So hold on.
So I would encourage
Jesus didn't command repentance?
Jesus loves people. And the Holy Spirit in me has a hard time walking past them. You know what I mean? It's something inside you says, go tell them this is not the way to reach these people. Beating them over the head with signs that say God condemns you. I'm very humbled and grateful that I've received thousands of emails from anime fans who said, you know what, I've never really felt like there was a place for me in Christianity or faith, but seeing that video and seeing you take a stand for us has caused me to maybe even rethink and open myself to the possibility that God really does love me just as I am and wants a relationship with me just as I am.
If you haven't done so, you can check out Vic's work on Star Trek Continues. You can find it online. Up next, as the Outcry Tour travels the West Coast, we're catching up with the man in charge. And welcome back. We are almost out of time for this Studio 5 episode, so let's take a look ahead to next week.
God spoke to me. He wants us to turn the land around the church into a farm. He said, I've given you land, I've given you farmers, do the math. You know, if we can get a certain number of people to buy tickets to see this movie, we can make more movies like this.
Look at Miss Delphia's hair. After I investigated the whole story and saw the finished product of the movie, I was like, wow, this is a must-see story for especially a lot of the smaller churches out there that are struggling.
You can look forward to that story coming next week. Time now for the final word in this show. Ryan Romeo is the man behind the Outcry Music Tour, and today he's sharing an encouraging word about the power of the local church.
If you are a pastor, if you're any sort of church leader in this room, I'd like for you to stand up right now.
People have been talking about the local church and the problems of the church and how we're in decline and we're dying, and for us we go, no. You know, we see in Revelation that the church is there. We're not going anywhere, we're on the winning team, there's no need to feel defensive.
Ryan Romeo, thank you for that great word. It is also the final word for this edition of Studio 5. Until next time, reach out and touch me at Ephraim Graham on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. And then you be sure to come on back next week to see where Studio 5 takes you then. Bye-bye, everybody.